Hey, what's going on, everybody? Grant Temple here. This is the sales plug. Today we got Dylan Vergara from Serial Sales. I'm super pumped to have a solid conversation with you here. I know you're very well established in this online sales world. So everyone that does listen here, make sure you're dialed in. This is definitely going to be valuable. We're going to be talking online business, specifically through the lens of sales and Dylan's expertise. So let's just dive right into it here, man. So I looked a little bit into your story. I've been following you for a little bit. I know you started in roofing sales, transitioned into high ticket sales online, started a sales agency. So I guess why sales? What made you step in this direction? And what's the journey been like for you so far?
Yeah, man. I mean, coming up, I was the opposite of a sales guy. I was to myself. I went towards like the construction engineering route in school. And I ended up in sales just by chasing a better income and a more enjoyable experience to achieve that income. So I didn't want to be like, I want to make a lot of money, but I didn't want to go to school for 8 years. I didn't want to work, a job like a doctor, a lawyer, where it's like, it's really taxing, right? And sales is taxing, don't get me wrong. But yeah, just through like process of elimination, as I started getting more information about what it actually takes to get the outcome that I wanted, sales seemed to be the vehicle that would get me there and check most of the boxes along the way. So it's been so far, man. I mean, aside from finances and that upside, like being in sales has definitely changed my life. It's changed who I thought I was, who I thought I could be. And I would say like I've been able to level up a ton across all aspects of my life just from things that I learned by being in sales and that trial and error and so forth. So it's been good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a good point there where it's you're kind of forced to level up in all areas of your life. So I guess how would you find the correlation between it being necessary essentially to be high performing outside of sales to be high performing inside of sales as well? Do you find a correlation between those?
Not, I mean, for me, yes, but like I can't say, oh, you need to be high performing in the gym to succeed at sales. It's just not true. Like you think of I always think back to some of these guys that work at car dealerships and they've been there for like 20, 30 years. They're overweight, their marriage sucks, like everything sucks except the money they make. So like it's not necessary, but I definitely think, bro, because like if I'm really into like running right now and I've been into the gym and that kind of stuff. Like when I'm doing my best in those other areas of my life, or like maybe relationships or other things, like I just feel better about myself, and that like translates into the way that I speak to people, conduct business, all that stuff. So for me, it's a win-win, and it's pretty mandatory. I do see when those areas, sometimes I get really sucked into work, which there's seasons for that. But when I start to neglect the other areas like nutrition, that kind of stuff, like I definitely start to see it in my work, and I try to correct it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I noticed as well. Is there, at least for me personally, right? It's funny to say that about a car dealership. I used to work at a car dealership, as a matter of fact, and you're absolutely right about that. But a lot of times when I found myself struggling, like just in my sales numbers, my sales performance, I'm saying the same things. I'm having the same conversation. I know the offer, like what's changed. And it's typically everything outside of my sales role. And when I can get that back aligned, it, tends to fall into place. So now how was the transition from doing roofing sales, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said you're in roofing sales, based on some of your content, and actually leaving that job and going to doing like online high ticket sales? That's a big step, right? I know a lot of times it's, even though roofing sales, it's its own hustle and probably even harder in a lot of ways, right? But it's more traditional, so to speak. How was taking that transition from a more traditional, so to speak, sales role to online high ticket sales? What was that like for you?
I think I did it in one of the better ways that you can. So I was doing like really well in roofing sales. I was very like established within the company, and I kind of had some leverage there. And I had just saved up a ton of money, man. Like I gave myself so much runway to where there was a certain point where I think I was on Twitter, and I was seeing all these kids talking about high ticket sales and 10K a month, 20K a month, all that from my apartment, whatever. And I just got to a point where I was like, bro, I've been the top guy here for the last 12 months, every single month. And I see a lot of these kids, like quite literally kids, ripping like 10, 15K months remote. And I just, like, in my mind, the only barrier between where I was and where they were was just like the effort to go and do it. Like, there was no doubt in my mind, because of my results in roofing sales, that I could succeed in high ticket. And so the transition, I overlapped, trying to work the two for about a month, and I not trying, but like working the two was very hectic, because I'm working like one job that requires me to be in a quiet place with a Zoom camera and have my laptop and be ready to go. And I'm working another job that requires me to drive to all corners of a large city and go in home, sit at the dining table. So I only lasted a month doing both. And then that's when I made the full transition. I was like, I can't keep doing both. So it
Yeah.
was pretty ideal though. I had the money saved, went all in. I waited to, like, I feel like I did what most people do, where it's like, before you decide to go into high ticket, you find it, and then you just watch for a little bit, and you just kind of see, like, is this really happening? Like, how long are these guys going to be posting like this 10K month, or this close that they did in 45 minutes and made $900? And I just kept seeing it. So yeah, I played it pretty safe, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone's journey is kind of different in that way as well, right? I think some people are like, I'm just so ready to get out of what I'm doing, they'll just quit right away and go full in. But yeah, I think it's that transition process can, be handled well, and make sure that you're comfortable and set up. So then you eventually transitioned into creating your own sales agency, and kind of building teams out. And correct me if I'm wrong. You hire sales reps, manage teams for businesses, get them placement. So I guess explain to me exactly what your business does now, what you offer, and what that kind of moving into that was like for you.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So right now, like, I have two main businesses. One, which was actually started before, was the sales community that I run, the B2C stuff. But the sales agency is the larger one, where a lot of the, like, my entity's revenue comes from, I would say. And it started by me, getting into closing for a couple different offers, finding myself in a position of management, realizing the leverage that I had in management, and then the natural progression where people are like, oh, dude, I can close on one offer. What if I close on two? What if I close on three? How much money can I make? I basically did that with management. But then I realized, like, dude, managing a team full on and driving, you know, better and better results, like, it's a lot of work. And that's when I realized, like, bro, I can't just do this as a contractor, or else the results are going to be subpar. So that's when I started, like, hiring, connecting with people, and it's just, like, evolved. We've really only been running it since, like, at scale officially, since like April of this past year, so 8 months ago. And we have, like, a full team built out beneath us for, like, operations, finance, sales teams, obviously, and, like, marketing partners and all that. So that's kind of how I got into it. I can't remember the other part of the question.
Well, I guess now on maybe the community side of things. So you're actually working with businesses. You kind of have the operations and things in place to manage their sales teams. Now, I guess a little bit about the community side of things. I know a big, piece of what you do is getting people into high ticket sales, finding roles. I think you do some training as well. So I guess what's that
Yeah.
side of your business look like?
Yeah, I do like to make the distinction. They're quite separate. Even though they complement each other, a lot of people, they'll think, like, oh, if I join your community, like, oh, you're gonna hire me to work for your agency, or how many people work for your agency that join the community. It's literally like 1%. Like, it's very low. The community focus is on that transition. Like, a lot of people in the beginning found me and followed me because of the transition that I was documenting, not because I was out here saying 30K months from the beach, whatever. And so we really focus on getting people from point A, which is maybe their in-person sales job, maybe it's not even a sales job, to point B being remote, online, high ticket setting, closing, whatever it might be, and then avoiding the speed bumps on the way. And that's what we focus on. There's a lot of people that focus on sales training, and we have sales training, but sales training doesn't get you jobs. And so a lot of people fall into that like trap where they pay all this money, they have all this stuff in their brain, but they don't have a place to practice. So we focus on the job portion of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I want to dive into that in a little bit here, coming back to,
Sure.
finding a role, because I think you're right. There's a ton of people that have sales training. And sales training is one of those things too. I mean, at this point, I think everything's documented and out there. I don't think there's any new thing that anyone's going to come up with that's, groundbreaking as far as being able to sell someone and communicate well. But I do think making sure you can transition into a career is an important part. So, kind of going back to maybe the agency side of things, what would you say is the biggest benefit as far as a business goes to have a sales agency, I guess, manage their team and kind of scale it as opposed to doing everything in-house?
Yeah. Speed, proof of concept. And the main thing, like our perfect client, man, is someone who's world class at what they do. And they're so good at it that all they want to do is think about fulfilling the service. Like example, we met this guy in Austin. We have a fitness coach that we run sales for. He's so good at what he does. He has multiple people like IFBB pro. I don't know the exact term. But like he's very established. And the last thing that he wants to think about is scaling and managing a sales team. And so if he can just focus on the results, getting people their pro card, and he's building like supplement company, all this stuff, I mean, that just helps us sell more. And so our perfect client is that, where it's like, bro, if you want the proof of concept, a team that's done, over 8 figures in 2024, you don't want to think about a sales team, and you're really good at what you do, you could probably benefit from us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it's certainly, I've worked inside of a sales team that's grown a lot, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it takes, a full-time managing different personalities as well. I think making sure that there's a dynamic that exists between the business, the offer, the management, the sales reps, and having that, synergy there in a positive way definitely has some nuance to it. So if someone doesn't want to have to do all that, they come to you and you basically handle that side of things.
Yep. It's a lot of work, man. And we started as just sales. And we still do just sales. Like that fitness client I told you about, we're just doing the sales team, but we have other teams now where we will do marketing and sales. We'll even come in and put our own credit card on an ad account and spend thousands and thousands of dollars a day. And we just found that with the right product, it allows us, it just lets us have like more control, and to make sure that our team has what it needs to get the results that it needs. It allows us to operate faster. But that's like a evolution of the sales agency. Like we see one problem, and then we figure out how do we avoid that problem. And part of it became like absorbing marketing as well. But yeah, I mean, it looks different from each client.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then I guess on the sales rep side of thing, what would you say is the biggest benefit for a potential high ticket sales rep to move into the online sales world and actually take a role as a sales rep?
I think it's just being competent, man. Like it's not even having a sales background helps, but like example, for our agency, I have a recruitment pipeline, and it's a type form, and it asks you attach your resume, attach a closed call recording, attach your numbers, attach whatever, like a Loom video. Like it's pretty intense. And like 70% of people don't even attach, like they just leave shit blank. Like, so just being competent, just being professional. There's a lot of kids in this industry that are here because they were sold the moon and the stars and how easy it is to make 10K a month. So if you just show up a little bit more prepared, a little bit more willing to put in work, like you're going to be top 20% off the bat, just because you're not looking for a shortcut.
Yeah. Yeah, I've found that one of the, I think a reason that I've been able to kind of stick around in this, people come and go from this industry, man.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And one thing that I've always tried to, pride myself on is operating like a professional, right? As much as it is kind of a laid back in a way. I get to sit here in my home office and,
Yeah.
my dog's barking downstairs. I kind of make my own schedule to a certain extent. But I still want to operate like a professional. And a lot of times people, they struggle with that part the most. They're actually okay communicators, but they can't keep up with the being a professional side of it. That's a really good takeaway. So I'm curious, where do you see, I'll add nuance to this question here, but where do you see this online business industry going? Because I see a lot of, everyone has their own opinions, their own thing that they're selling, right? So there's a lot of noise out there, but I'm big on to really scale like a business. I've worked in one that did, 50 mil in sales. It was crazy, 180 sales reps. I mean, it was absurd,
Yeah.
right? That would have never happened if a sales team wasn't there, sales calls weren't being taken. Like, I don't think anyone will ever get to that through the DMs or just through like a VSL funnel. But I see a lot of people out there kind of, hey, you don't need to take sales calls for your business. You can close everything in the DMs. Teams aren't necessary. I know which side of it I'm on, but where do you see all of this going? And what's your thoughts on, maybe having, I guess to clarify the question, having a sales team, taking sales calls and having that in place versus kind of doing it another way?
I think it depends. Overall, like I think there's always going to be a need for it, especially as like AI and technology becomes more prevalent. There are going to be parts of it that I think can be outsourced. Like, you're seeing these AI DM setters, you're seeing these AI phone setters. Some of them are pretty decent, some of them are not quite there yet. And I just think we're going to get to a point where that human touch, especially in like an online matter like Google Meet like this or Zoom, like it's going to become more appreciated. Now, the market's always trying to solve for inefficiency and, to increase profitability and all that stuff. So that, if anything, the setting side of it, I'm not even going to say, like, I do want to look at it like objectively. I don't think that's going to disappear, but I think you'll see more and more people introduce like or try to introduce things that eliminate the human error, increase profitability, all that stuff. There's just certain things, man, like buying a car, like you just got to go and talk to someone. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a certain level of the more people kind of transition away from, the human touch, I think that's going to be what makes, the businesses more successful. Now, I guess looking at profit margins and all that and paying commissions, it's all worth taking a look at to see where the numbers actually land. But I just have a hard time, I don't know the exact number, but having a hard time seeing a business do 150, 200, 250K a month or $1 million a month without having like a team in place of some sort, right? Or getting on calls and having that level of connection. So I was curious on your takeaway from that, particularly from your vantage point.
yeah, it really depends, man. Like you will see the odd case of just like perfect storm of like a ton of brand goodwill built up, and like maybe someone releases their first product, maybe it's $3,000, they send people to a buy now page and they can make 250K a month. But like when we're talking about longevity and scaling to colder and colder audiences, like it's tough. It's tough to like imagine that you can get people to spend at scale that much money without like a serious interaction.
Yeah. 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 I completely agree. So, all right, cool. And what was kind of wrapping up maybe the overall strategy side of things? What's the impact and legacy that you want to leave with your business, but also your personal brand as well? I've watched some of your YouTube videos. I know you had kind of you were reflecting a little bit. I think I was just today or the other day that you posted that video.
Yep.
Now I can tell that's a little bit on your mind. So what is the impact and legacy you want to leave, not only with your business, but I guess also your personal brand side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never really thought about it. on that end? Like how would I like to impact the industry, you know? Well, I think people are waking up to the idea that like this online high ticket education services, all that, like it's just growing, like it's becoming larger and larger and larger. And a lot of people, like if you zip back to, I don't know, let's say 7, 8 years ago, everyone just got like this poor perception of what this stuff is, you know, like the education. Everyone thinks like, oh, courses, scam, online business doesn't exist, whatever. Like people are starting to wake up to the idea that it is real, it does exist, it's not a scam. And so I would say just contribute to that ideology, like be one of the people earlier on who could help people gain that confidence that, oh, dude, maybe there is other opportunity out there for me through this vehicle.
Yeah.
So on the business end, that help people, you know, scale their businesses and make their impact without having to manage a sales team and worry about all that stuff is pretty cool. But yeah, I haven't really thought about that like in depth too much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that though, because I think the industry it is evolving quickly, but it's also something that's been around for a while, and I think people don't draw this connection a lot. So I've actually sold, an offer that teaches how to create information business courses, coaching, masterminds, or becoming an affiliate marketer for someone else's, right? And a lot of times I try to explain to people, I'm like, you remember like P90X back in the day? You get your like 8-pack abs at home. I was like, they were selling information and coaching and diet plans. Like the only thing that's changed now is the medium in which it's done and the fact that anyone can do it. And a lot of times that kind of makes it click, but I still think there's a ton of people they can't understand the concept of selling education type of stuff online or service based. Even there's just like a disconnect. But yeah, I think contributing to that overall, like you said, ideology, that's awesome. And one more kind of on the personal side of things that we can leave people with, and you don't have to go too far into it if you don't want, but I saw you recently got engaged as well. I know that's a big sale to make, right? One of the biggest ones you maybe ever made. How was that experience like for you? And congratulations, that's sick.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's a full circle moment because it was about a little over 4 years ago. Not a little bit. It was about 5 years ago when I met her. I met her on what was it? Christmas, the day after Christmas or something. Like it actually may have been 5 years ago to the day. I can't remember. It was this week during the holidays where, you know, all the people were back in town, in the hometown hanging out. But it was like right around that time too when I also got into sales. And so like my life in two different directions changed for the better. And in the beginning, you know, it wasn't, you know, like I was making all this money in sales right away, or like our relationship, like you were so sure about like, this is the one right away. But just seeing that progress over the last 5 years, like putting in the consistent effort and, you know, slowly on both sides of things, it becoming revealed like, hey, this is what I should be doing. It's been pretty cool, man. And I've made a little bit of content around that recently, just saying it's been very, I hate to like link the two, like, oh, you know, like I don't want to make it business oriented, but at the same time, like having that person to rely on, to, you know, have at the end of the day is just, I think it really was beneficial for me as I was coming up in the sales world. So it's definitely a big close.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, again, congratulations on that, man. I'm
For
happy
sure.
for you. I'm kind of wrapping up the strategy portion here. Obviously, you guys can follow Dylan on Instagram, YouTube. I'll make sure I get the links to that right in here, and we'll have whatever link that you'd like to put in here as well to your services, your offers, your community, whatever it is there. So you guys should definitely check him out. Now diving more into the tactical side of things, getting a little more into kind of the nitty gritty, so to speak. So kind of want to start on the building out a sales team. And starting off, knowing when a business, right? If you're a business owner and you have an offer, when do you know it's the right time to start hiring a closer, a couple closers, appointment setters, right? Like when is it time in a business, in your opinion, to start thinking about building out a sales team here?
I think you have to look at the market, look at what other people are doing, and understand what caliber of hire you're looking to make, and just manage your expectations. And I say that to say, like, there is no right time, right? Like it is totally dependent on what you're willing to accept within your organization. Because I know a lot of people, bro, they sell like one client for 2K a month. Maybe it's an agency. They're like, yeah, I need a closer. Like I'm gonna spend all this money on ads. Like I just need a closer. It's like, bro, no closer worth having is gonna want to close on that, you know? So um my general rule of thumb is like I would consider hiring someone when you can probably get them like a nice part-time income, relative to the time they're putting in. So for a closer, once I have the opportunity to give someone, 3 to 5K a month for 20 hours of work per week, like there's someone out there who would want that. Anything less, it's just like it's probably going to result in churn or like just wasted time or a bad relationship. So answer is it depends.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that because everything is situational. Everyone's going to be at a different point. And I think that is an important, distinction as well that I don't think a lot of people think about. And I've even helped some, other businesses that I've worked with hire and train people. And it is kind of, it's sometimes hard having the conversation too, as the person that's helping out, being like, honestly, you're like, this is not at a place that anyone will want to come work this. Just truthfully, there's got to be other things that are in place. So I think that's a really good point there. So I guess kind of on that, what do you think a business owner should have in place before bringing on a sales rep? Like bare bones, what should be there to go, hey, maybe, now's the time to bring someone on and it'll be attractive enough for someone to say yes.
Yeah. Proof of concept that the product or service works. So, maybe like at least like 2 to 3 successful testimonials, just so you know that it works. I would say the infrastructure to see, an increased rate of onboarding into this service or product, and then just like a predictable way to get leads inbound, whether it's opt-ins, whether it's calls on a calendar. Once you have those things, then it's just about managing expectations with the sales reps, because like you can hire someone and pay them $1,500 a month for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they'll be super happy if that's what they were expecting, and the work to get that is what they were expecting. So yeah, it's just like making sure the fulfillment's good, making sure you can actually scale the fulfillment, predictable lead flow, and then manage expectations. That's the 4.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think is it probably comes down to clear communication, right? But even in sales, sometimes you can say something as clear as day and people still hear what they want to hear, or they take from it, maybe even something different than you said. So what do you think a good way to make sure there's clear expectations set, so there can be that good relationship as far as a business and a sales rep goes?
Yeah, I like to get the data, man. I like to see the numbers, because a lot of business owners, they think, I'm not that good at sales, and if I can do this and I get a salesperson in, that they should be able to do this, and then they make projections around that. So I would just say, like, I don't really want to hear projections. I want to see the numbers, and I want to know like the inputs, how they're potentially increasing to get us to projections. But yeah, I mean, like you said, communication, and just transparency.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you expect any sort of, I guess, framing this question a little bit, I feel like at times when a business owner is kind of doing the sales themselves and they're literally getting on calls or whatever form of communication they're having, right? If the offer's really dialed in, they're providing a good service, their social proof, like all these things are in place, it could close 50, 60, 70%, maybe even higher. You know what I mean? I do think, though, there's probably a natural drop off when you bring a sales rep in. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but would you expect any sort of, at least in the beginning, a drop off in close rate? And how would you manage that as the business owner to go, all right, they're not closing exactly what I was. how do we manage this in the meantime, and then help get them to at least close to that number that they were closing at on their own offer.
Yeah, sometimes it depends how good or bad the founder is at sales, because I've seen it go both ways. The usual is there is kind of a drop off just because they don't understand the product or the results as well. And that's why, like, we talked about managing expectations on the sales rep side. Like, the business owner needs to manage expectations with what they can expect as well. Like, when we come in, we actually don't do too much recruiting these days because that expectation on both ends is very difficult to manage at scale. I should rephrase that. We don't do much paid recruiting. We post jobs and all that. But yeah, I guess know that, if you're going to have a rep come on board, it should probably take them 60 to 90 days to actually really feel confident on what they're selling and like to be able to talk about it like it's their own. Some people are going to pick that up faster, in a week, 2 weeks, it's possible. But if you're at least like C plus, B minus level proficient in communicating value of your service, you're going to have to manage expectations around that potential drop off. And I would say if we get into like 45, 60-day range and you're not seeing like improvements, then, it's probably a conversation that needs to be had there.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of diving into that, I guess then kind of finding the right sales rep and making sure that they get onboarded and this side of things. What are top qualities that you look for in a sales rep to make sure that they can succeed in not only high ticket sales, but specific to whatever, kind of offer it is as well? What are some of the qualities that you're looking for?
There's a handful, but the main ones are like the qualities. You want some of the qualities that a business owner themselves would have, and some of those you don't want. Meaning, like, you want someone who's going to take ownership. You want someone who's going to figure it out no matter what. You want someone that they can problem solve. They can use critical thinking, high level of accountability. They're going to treat it like it's their own. I find that trait in a lot of like former athletes, a lot of military guys, that kind of thing. A lot of times when people are excelling at things outside of sales, let's call it marathon running, or they're into Ironman training, they're into chess. They play chess at a really high level. Like, to get to that level, you have to embody all of those characteristics, and usually they can transfer that to sales. And so that's really what I'm looking for. But, going back to like the idea of you want them to have the similar traits as the entrepreneur, it's like you kind of want that person to be in a different perspective or different frame of mind when it comes to operating within your business. They need to understand that, like, you're the boss. They need to understand that I am a part of this entire machine. I am not the machine, like, so that you have to just like find that balance there for sure.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, because when I worked in the offer, actually I'm still with it, but an offer that went from, I think when I started it was like maybe 20 sales reps, and I've been through all the way up to like 180. I trained a lot of people in that growth phase. And one thing that I noticed with people that would not last long in it, or they'd struggle with it and wonder why there wasn't, how can I say this? They didn't like conform, for a lack of a better word, to the sales process they were working in, or buy into the business. Again, they thought they were the machine, essentially, like, no, I've learned this way, I'll do it my way. And there was never like it was like, you're probably good at sales in the grand scheme of things, but you're not exactly aligned with the offer and the culture and everything. How do you feel you get people aligned into that to make sure that it's a good fit?
Yeah, man, I always try to make sure that the people that we hire, the role that they're coming into is always like an up step for them. So they're potentially, they have this skill, they haven't had the opportunity to execute on it, or I love to give people like a shot, because the worst thing to have is like a super jaded sales rep that did really well over here, and like the only reason they're taking this is because they need money, and they're already kind of trying to do their own thing on the side. So like I I like to entertain guys that like if you ask them behind closed doors about this, they'd be like, bro, I don't think I'm qualified. Like they have some doubt on like if they actually have a chance. And those guys like they work the hardest, man. They have the best energy. They bring the best energy to the team, and that like lifts the whole team up. So not to say like we're always trying to look for people that don't have experience or anything like that. It's just like we want to make sure that if someone ends up in this role, like they're hyped to be in this role.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, because there's a mentor of mine would use this kind of word, and he'd be like, sometimes it's ignorance on fire. Like you'll see someone come into a new role and they jump right to the top of the sales leaderboard almost immediately. And it's because they're excited to be there, excited for the opportunity. It's new.
Yeah.
And it kind of to a certain extent might not even matter what words they're saying, but they're just, they're transferring the energy and the belief in what they're doing to the customer, and they'll come out of the gates hot, right? And then you'll see some people that are seasoned sales reps that have been with the offer for a while, and they're still love it and they're passionate about it, but that initial like that burn has kind of worn off, and they're now in comfortable to a certain extent, right? So I think that's a good perspective, making sure there's a good energy and making sure people are excited about it, and that certainly helps. What do you think part of that would be probably going through an onboarding process, right? So if you're a business hiring a sales rep, kind of more on the tactical side, what does an onboarding process look like for bringing, a sales rep onto your team? What should a business owner do, and what should a sales rep expect?
Yeah, I usually on our teams, man, we put together like a database of just all the information that you could possibly have on what we're selling, without getting into that, like the marketing stuff, the client journey, the testimonials, like everything that you could need to understand the picture of what a potential buyer is expecting when they get on this call. So that, ideally, we don't have any teams that are like 180 people. So we haven't had to like build a super robust like onboarding mechanism, I guess. Like our biggest team right now is like 8 people. And so, I wish I could say like, oh yeah, dude, we have this crazy freaking onboarding sequence thing. We do have an operations team that like has automations and stuff for like signed agreements and onboarding reps into the CRM once we have their email and all that stuff. But like we just have a centralized place with all the information. We give people a little bit of time to review that, probably do a little quizzing, maybe run through some like dry runs, connect them to the team, have them talk to people, watch call recordings. And I mean, I'm under the like assumption that genuine reps, if you can afford them, are probably the best training that sales rep can get.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like being just on the phone or call or whatever, right? Video call and just getting actual reps in. But at the same time, from a business owner side, right, is like you said, if you can afford it, you're always paying for leads in some sort of way. Even if you're not doing paid advertising, you're still spending time creating content or doing something to bring in leads. You don't want them being burned either. So, and I found too, I think a lot of times when it's just like a customer of the offer, sometimes they're the best people to come in and sell because they've experienced the transformation. So even if you don't have that necessarily, if you have the sales rep go through the process as a customer would, that, they can have that level of conviction on what they're selling. So kind of like you said, get the bigger picture on it so they understand everything that the customer is going through and they can actually relate to it.
For my sales community, I think all of them. Yeah, all of them right now, all the guys that work on our sales team, like are people who came into the program, bought full price, went out into the market, got the result, and then are like, dude, looking for something part-time, and then there's just a connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, being able to say like you're a user of the product, like some of our highest performing teams, the people are using the thing, whether they've already gotten the result or they're getting the result. It's a cheat code.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost sometimes too, if you really want to identify a problem in a sales rep or a team at some point, right? You can just ask them point blank, like, what do you think of the offer? And almost based off the immediate reaction, you can be like, if you don't have conviction on it, there's really nothing else that's going to matter, right? So it's getting that buy-in as well, making sure they have conviction in the offer is super important. I think that's why a lot of times people have gone through the process as a customer or gotten the result from the thing or using it as if they're a customer, even though they probably just have access as a sales rep. Is definitely important. So now kind of day-to-day management, kind of, I guess, managing multiple sales teams, but even from a business owner's perspective, what does the day-to-day management of a team look like to ensure performance?
Yeah. Well, my like current role in the agency is I'm kind of like my not sole responsibility. My main responsibility is kind of like upfront marketing and sales of the agency off like personal brand and connections and all that stuff. So I'm not like personally day-to-day managing any of the sales teams. I take the sales calls for the agency. My partner will hop on sometimes. We have like a suite of account managers or sales managers who will help us out. And so for them and like the process that my partner and I were running before we had them is pretty simple, man. Like we don't run it very like it's strict, but it's not like militant. Some of these teams out there are very, for having 1099 contractors, they're very like assumptive in what they can ask for and get out of people. But we just make sure that the product and the client that we're working with is so good, it's so in demand that the sales is the easy part. And so, we do a couple meetings a week. We have our manager meeting, then the sales teams have a couple meetings per week, call reviews, constant feedback loop between marketing, sales team, fulfillment, and yeah, just like we're super data driven. So our operations team has been able to put together like awesome dashboards at the team level and the agency level, so we can get that feel of what's going on at any given point in time. But yeah, nothing too crazy, man. Like I think the reason why we don't have to have this really intense structure with our sales teams is because pretty much everybody that's working for us right now, we either knew them beforehand, like we knew them from years prior selling alongside them, or very few of them like came through my community or they were referred to us. There's a very, very small amount that we just genuinely, we saw them in the application pool. We had no idea who they were, and they actually were the best fit. So a lot of it, like there's a lot of trust built in to where, they know me, they know my partner Cole, and they're like, I don't want to get in here and like mess around because that would damage the relationship that I have with these guys. So
right,
trust, then just hiring people that already have some like level of competency. Out of all the people that I know in the sales industry that run agencies or sales teams or manage, like we definitely run one of the more like relaxed operations, but our results are still really, really good.
Yeah. And I think that it can be that way, right? I think particularly to 1099, right? They're not W-2 employees. I mean, technically you can't tell them like, hey, you have to be on this meeting or you have to work these hours. Of course, you kind of can to a certain extent, but it's not the same relationship as a W-2 employee. And I'm not a business lawyer or anything like that, but I just know that to be true. And I think it comes down to hiring people that are professionals, right? Kind of going back to that from earlier, is like you want someone to treat it as a professional. And I think that's, at least my approach with it as a 1099 contractor was, I'm going to treat this as if, again, not this is my machine type of thing, but I still treated my 1099 role like it's my book of business. Like I did that at a car dealership. I did it in my 1099, contracted sales role is, hey, I'll play within these boundaries that are set. I'm bought into the offer and the overall culture, but I still treated it, as a professional. Like, this is my business essentially. And I think that you being in an environment where it's relaxed, having people that act professionally is definitely important.
It's everything, man. I think, once we get to the point of scale where we're bringing in people that have no idea who I am, who my partner is, I mean, there's definitely going to be a different way of going about things, but having like personal brand, posting content to where people feel like they kind of know you a little bit already, like that trust that we have about give or take like 30 people on the team.
Yeah.
And so it's just like most of those people already know who we are and what we're about before, and that's why they want to work with us. So
right.
Makes it
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, for sure. I know you said you're very, data driven, and I'm sure there's a million different points that you can track, right? But what would you say are, if from a business owner going, I need my base level KPIs, right? Kind of as a business, but I guess still directly in correlation to a sales team and hiring. What are KPIs that you would be tracking to make sure that, one, I guess the business is doing well in sales, but also to make sure the sales rep is performing?
Yeah, I mean, first thing to like establish the ground floor, like you need to identify what is a qualified lead for your business. A lot of people like to push garbage to sales teams and hope that they make magic out of it, but it's rarely the case. So I would say, establish what a quality lead is, and then I would just track like lead in. So whether it's an opt-in, started a booking application, there's so many different triggers that could establish lead in. And then number of calls booked off of that. You'd also want to track the number of sets booked. Maybe the lead came in but didn't book, and then the setter dialed in. So kind of analyze that ecosystem of like how many people are organically booking, how many are we having to book, how many are we losing. And then when it comes to the actual like closing, pretty standard, like show rate, offer rate, close rate, cash collected rate. There's probably some others. If we're keeping it high level, like those are the main ones that just come to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, obviously, looking at the numbers tells a bigger story. And I think sometimes people go a lot off a feel somehow, for lack of a better word, right? And it's like, well, things can feel good, but when you actually look at the numbers, it allows for areas of improvement as well. And that was something that I've always tried to do. I've worked in a multi-call sequence as well, where it's not just one call, you're kind of bringing people through a process. And if you really kind of track like, all right, well, this many people showed up to the first call, but not the second. It's like, all right, well, I got to improve the first call. And there's little levers you can pull when you're actually tracking the data. So certainly, keeping track of the KPIs is important. So how would you approach then if someone, because this can always be a delicate conversation, right? Sales, there's comes a little bit of ego with it, right? And you can get defensive of performance. How do you approach someone who's maybe underperforming and having sort of that tough conversation, but getting them to the point where they are performing?
In a lot of the cases, man, when that's happened, funny enough, because we have a relationship with a lot of these people, they'll bring it up to us. Like I've sat and thought about that for a little bit, like some unique examples. And like a lot of times these guys are bringing it up to us. They're like, hey man, like I know my performance has been down lately. I'm having this situation, or this is drawing my attention. I plan on doing this. So I would say acknowledgement and acceptance, like establishing that, whether it's us going to them or them coming to us, like being like, yeah, this is not okay. How do we fix it? So whether it's more time dedicated to your follow-up, more time reviewing call recordings of the top guy, more focus just in general to the team and what the mission that we're on. So establishing like the problem, like making us both on common ground that this is a problem, and then implementing like whatever the plan is to get back to where they are meant to be. And yeah, like, dude, luckily we actually, for being a sales agency and like the nature of the business that we're in, like we have a really low churn rate, not only with clients, but with our sales reps. And so, you know, we are performance driven. We don't take like, you know, subpar people on our team just because we like them, but we've genuinely not really had much issue with like low performing guys. We have to fire them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like communication, transparency, going back to like the previous conversation. Because a lot of the guys that we're bringing on, like, yeah, we want to take a shot on them and give them like a big opportunity, but like, we're not doing that like blindly. Like we're considering them because they have done good things in the past. So it's not a matter, like a lot of times if somebody's underperforming, unless they're like have some personal stuff going on, like we're always quick to kind of not take the blame, but like look internally and be like, why, you know, what are we doing wrong? And you know, how's that affecting this person's performance? But yeah, man, just having that open conversation, like that's how we approach it.
Yeah. Yeah. And churn is certainly something that is, it happens in the sales industry, right? And it's impressive that you say you do have a low churn rate. Because it can be, there's a lot of things that can go into that, right? Not only just the business side, but the person themselves may have a lot going on, and that can all contribute to it. I think due to the nature of even 1099, right? There is that level of freedom, or not as binding. I don't know the exactly right way to put it, right? But how do you keep top performers on a team for an extended period of time, right, to really reduce churn? And maybe even, I don't know, say underperformance doesn't sound like you have a ton, but how do you make sure that churn does stay low? What do you think a key to that is?
Yeah, keeping top performers, man, it's like you got to offer them a top opportunity. Like that's why, you know, I told you earlier, we're looking at like all the things that could go wrong, that could slow us down, that could affect our numbers, and marketing was one of those. And that's why we started picking up the marketing, because if we can control the whole thing, we can fix things faster, we can test things faster, we can increase the volume for our guys to you know, hold these top opportunities for them. You know, my partner and I, like at the end of the day, we realize like if we have top talent and they're not within a top opportunity for us, like they're going to go somewhere else. And that's just the name of the game. So it keeps a fire under us for sure to be on whoever we need to be on to make sure that they can do what they want to do. But the cool thing is too, man, like a lot of the guys that we work with, like, yeah, they want to make good money. Like they want to do 10, 20, 30K a month. But a lot of the guys that we hire, and this is maybe, you know, something unique to us, like we don't really hire too many young guys. Like all of our guys are like, I'm one of the youngest people in the agency and I'm 26. So like a lot of these guys, they value balance. Like they value a good income and some days off, which, you know, lets us like, you know, have a little bit of relief there, but not completely. So when it comes to keeping the top guys, you know, if something slows down here, we can always move people from one team to another. But yeah, I mean, we're still very early on, but that's worked for us so far.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, it can be a balancing act, right? Making sure you're keeping people happy. And obviously, you know, top performers, they want opportunity, they want to make money, obviously. And I do think as much as it's funny, a lot of us get into even just the whole online world thing is like, you want this freedom, and I can just do what I want, when I want, where I want. And then all of a sudden you still find yourself in routine and stability. Given you get more freedom, you can do it when you want, where you want. But I think a lot of people, as just human being nature, probably is making sure that, you know, the opportunities there, they can excel in that role. And I think one thing that I've noticed about a lot of your answers, it's a good takeaway for any business owner thinking about that. You talk about it a lot. First is what you do, like your leadership, and how you guys operate. And how can I say this? it would be hard to be on a team of yours, look at the things you're doing, and then be a shitty performer from there, right? You would just feel out of place. So when you
Yeah.
get good leadership at the top and you're doing the things that you're doing, and whoever offers they're working for is delivering hard on the service, no one likes to be the slacker in that group. So that
Yeah.
jumps out to me. It seems like you do well yourself, and that bleeds down into the rest of your team.
Yeah, it definitely like there's people that kind of get into this position and then they go, they create so much leverage that they don't have to do anything. I think one cool thing about us is like, bro, I'm working as hard as the hardest guy, if not harder, on the team. And so they kind of see that. Like I post a lot on social media. It's like part of my job, I guess. But like I'm
Yeah.
always, in front of the laptop, even when I'm traveling. I'm always, I'll be responding to messages. Like I wake up in the middle of the night, check the time, I see a WhatsApp message or Slack message, like I'll respond. Like there's really nothing that like is off limits. Like sure, I try to have my sacred time these days. Like I try to, take off on Christmas with the family, whatever. But like I'm not above like getting in the trenches, even if we have all these people in place. And that culture, like it trickles down for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Those were great takeaways from that. Now, maybe a little bit from the sales rep side, right? So we've talked about the business owner side of things. Getting started in high ticket sales, what do you think is for someone kind of making the transition? I know we've kind of talked about some of the benefits of it. What do you think would be the biggest mindset shift for someone going, all right, I'm really gonna dive into this? What do you think needs to click up here a little bit to make sure they're ready to get into this?
Yeah, you gotta operate like a business, because as a 1099 contractor, it's very easy. It's very easy to like kind of let your emotions like cloud your judgment, especially in a sales capacity. Um, like maybe a relationship that you have with one person or the next will make you feel some type of way about a certain opportunity. So I would just say like you need to be able to like get out of your own head and look at things objectively. Like I talked about it a little bit before, but like always kind of just zooming out, assessing the situation for what it is, and identifying when you're getting wrecked or when you're in like you're in a good position to like see upside. And like I think why I've been able to like accelerate through from being roofing sales to high ticket to community to agency to doing a lot of revenue is like I'm not afraid to admit that like I did something wrong, that I am the problem, and I'm able to like zoom out and fix things. And so you got to be able to do that, because there's people in this space, it as well as I do, like they will fully take advantage of you if you let them. And at the end of the day, you're the one that has to pay the rent. You got to put the food on the table. You got to pay the bills. So sometimes you got to make hard decisions there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is, and I had a really good conversation with a fellow sales rep one time. And it was mainly around ego, essentially, is what it came down to. And I think when we think of ego, a lot of times it's, you just think of some like kind of dickhead walking around that thinks he's better than everyone else. But it kind of goes into what you're saying, where if you can put your emotions to the side and go, hey, maybe like I need to remove myself from it and how I feel about it and start looking at things objectively. A lot of times it really comes down to the art of putting your ego to the side to get objective views on things. I think that's the perfect way to kind of put as being objective about it, and treating it like a business. And I don't want to go too far into this, but would you recommend, because this is what I did, and I have a couple different things that I'm contracted to and affiliate offers, but as a 1099, I started my own LLC. I eventually elected for an S corp, and I'm not an accountant or anything like that. But would you recommend sales reps, if they're getting into a 1099 role? And I know you're not a tax accountant either, a business lawyer, but in your educational opinion, would you recommend people kind of creating their own business so they can really treat it like that as well?
Yeah, that's what I did. I did the LLC to S corp. Yeah, I mean, you don't need it from the start. Like some people get really hung up on that. As long as you file the LLC before you file that April for the year prior, Now, if you're doing the S corp, I'm not a tax advisor, accountant, or any of those things. If you're doing the S corp, there's some things that you need to do before. So you just talk to a professional. But yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it does give it some level of, I don't know, kind of when you put the stamp on the paper, so to speak, you do treat it like your business. You're like, they're paying my business name. It's
Yeah.
not Grant Temple signing up for the role. It's my business's name signing up for this role. And it gives it a different level of seriousness. So yeah, definitely if you're watching this, talk to an actual accountant or a corporate analyst or whoever can help you set up that structure. But it's definitely something to think about. Not only you get benefits from it, as far as, the write-offs and liability and all these sorts of things, but also too, just a mindset wise going, I have my own business, and then treating it with that respect.
Yeah.
So kind of diving into how to find a role. So, how do high ticket sales reps, like they've kind of got into the area, they go, this is what I want to do. What would be your first steps in, finding a role for them to start working on?
Yeah, there's two different ways to do it. Like, first, identify what's more valuable to you at the stage of life you're in. Is it time or money? Um, if time is more valuable and you have access to money, like I did this, and this is what I help people do, but like pay to get access to things that other people don't have access to. Like I paid to get into a program. It helped me land my first role. It helped me land my next role. Because like the best of the best stuff, it's not posted in that free Facebook group with 50,000 people. Like you can go search there. But yeah, just like paying for speed and expertise. Otherwise, you can, like, if you value money more than you value time at this current state, bro, you could send 100 cold DMs a day. You can do that. It sucks. You send 100, 10 respond, 5 you're not qualified for, 3 I don't know, like they say, yeah, let's set up an interview. It never happens. Maybe you get 2 interviews, no job offers. Like it's a numbers game. So all the people because I work with a lot of the sales reps still, like all of the best ones that see the most sustainable success the fastest, they get into some sort of network. They get really crafty with the way that they reach out to people, where they find them, how they contact them, the value they provide. And then they stay engaged in like this network of people that are also doing the same. So that's how I would do it. Like I would just simply do what other people aren't doing. Like everybody, the concept of like the LinkedIn easy apply, LinkedIn's not huge in this space. It's growing, but like if you're applying to, let's say, like tech sales jobs, and you're only doing the LinkedIn easy apply or something like that, like you're in a red ocean, like everybody's there. Like you got to go outside the box and go where people aren't if you want to get the best stuff. So that's how I would do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's such a good point. I'm curious as to your thoughts on this, because I do think there's a direct alignment issue as well. When I was training some people on the role I was in, how can I say this? When we were kind of scaling, I mean, I'm guessing they went to a recruiting agency and they were getting people, and I don't know exactly their whole back end process on how they did it. It was bananas though, watching it happen. But a lot of people, I don't think it ever invested into themselves in that sort of way. Like they valued their money over time. So then when they were selling an offer that was asking someone else to value their time over money, right? There was a lack of alignment. One of the first things I asked, like, I mean, do you think $2,500 is a lot of money? And they're like, well, yeah. And it's like, well, have you ever invested that into yourself? No. It's like a lack of alignment. So I think even just being willing to go, hey, I'm willing to put skin in the game, money on the line. When you go and you're selling something online, you're going to be asking people to do the same. And if you're not willing to do it yourself, it's going to be hard to kind of transfer that sort of energy to someone else. What's your thoughts on that?
That's super true. I always want to make this not sound, but I want people to know that like you can have great success in this industry and not pay anybody anything. Like it's possible. However, you're just going up against people who did pay for access, who did pay for speed. And you have to understand, like when you go head to head against that person that has more support behind them, that has more knowledge and more information, like don't be surprised when that person gets chosen. also, I mean, I don't use that, like, I don't do too much like cold, I call it like cold hiring, like talking to people that I don't know at all, to hire
Yeah.
for roles. But like what you just said, like if you can't spend that in yourself, how do I know you're going to have the conviction to have other people do something similar? Like that's a pretty solid measure of it as well. Um, Not required, but like you need to be able to look at things objectively. If you keep losing out on interviews because you don't know enough, you're not getting there fast enough for whatever reason, like it could be that like people just have more access than you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I do think that's an important part, having a network, a community, investing in yourself. It's like participating in the market that you're trying to extract money from. I think just aligns better overall. And you're right. I mean, the reality is no one has to buy anything. All the information's out there for free. Every opportunity's out there. But when you look at the totality of people that have success in just about anything, it's mainly people who put some level of skin in the game.
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah, like you could join all the Facebook groups, man. They're all free. There's a lot of people in them, but like the quality of network that you get by paying thousands of dollars to get in, whereas the quality where like people from all corners of the world can join regardless of qualification or experience, it's just night and day.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of speaking of that, I mean, what do you think if you're a sales rep looking for a role? I know we talked about it from the business owner side of things, but about being ready to actually take on a sales team. If you're a sales rep, particularly in this high ticket space, I think it's to a certain extent just as important that when you're getting interviewed, you do a little bit of interviewing yourself, like what are some things that you would recommend a sales rep that was going out and finding roles wherever it was? What would you recommend they look for in an offer to make sure it's something that they're not going to, kind of waste time, get burned on, those sort of things?
I like to I like to kind of like try to put the puzzle together to validate or invalidate what they've told me or shared with me prior. And so, I'm usually like when I was taking interviews, I kind of take a back seat, go through their process, answer questions as best I could, and then take note of all the information I'm gathering and like put it together in my head in a way where it's like, okay, this thing that I need to know is clear. This is clear. This one's not. I need to ask this question to get this result. And a lot of it's data driven again. So like, okay, you say the on target earnings of this role is $12,000 per month. Your company does last month you told me they did $300,000 per month. How many sales reps do you have? What are they earning on average? How long have they been earning that? What is the cash collected or revenue been fluctuating like over the last 30, 60, 90 days, 180 days? Like I really do take a data driven approach because the data doesn't lie. Like everything else can lie and people will be dishonest without realizing they're being dishonest. And so I just like to see the numbers. And then also I do search out like probably not when I was in the beginning stages as much, but now it's like I want to understand the longevity of this, like the future. In the beginning, it was like, bro, I just want to work from home, make good money, take some calls.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sell anything that's not good or useful. But like now, especially on the agency side, but as a sales rep, I would be trying to understand like the bigger picture and like where I could grow within this role, where the company could go. Just so I know, like, if I'm going to invest my time, effort, and energy here, I'm not going to be out in like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I guess then what would you say would be some quote unquote red flags to look for as far as if you see something in an offer, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like if you're looking for these data numbers, some of them might be forthright with it. Some might tell you, some might show you, right? There could be other things as well that are kind of like, if you see this in an offer, like, probably at least be cautious at the very least with it. What are some of those red flags that you would be looking out for?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to set the precedent, like I would probably at that point be asking like, pretty touchy questions around like revenue and earnings and all this stuff. But that's just the way the high ticket space is, man. It's very like black and white. It's very performance based. If they give me like ambiguous answers and they kind of beat around the bush around things, like I will literally ask the same question. As soon as they're done beating around the bush, I will ask them the same question again. Like you kind I mean, it goes back to the idea of like, establishing frame. And I don't mean it in like a power frame kind of way, but it's like, if they can see that you are not here to like mess around and you know what you're talking and you know why you're asking certain questions, like it's just a level of competency that not a lot of people are going to have. So being ambiguous, not having numbers in the first place is not a good sign.
Yeah.
And then also like people that are really quick to like hire or move forward with you. I'm not saying you should never accept a job where they offer on the interview, but like you got to kind of understand the whole dynamic and why they are potentially offering. Is it because you are genuinely just the perfect fit and they've been doing a lot of interviews, or is it because you are the only fool who's willing to entertain this opportunity? Like, so you understand the dynamic there. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to just clear communication, right? Both from the business's side and yours as a sales rep. But I feel like there's, especially when you're new, right? There's a level of confidence. It'll feel like a tough conversation. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm getting on there asking this business owner, what are your top guys making, and almost prove it to a certain extent, right? So there's a level of confidence that has to come with that. But I think if you have the level of confidence to ask that, they're going to see the competency that you have in having those sort of conversations. So it'll kind of work. It'll prove your sales skills to a certain extent, right?
Yeah. Man, I think it definitely helps when you come in with like you don't need to say yes. Like if you can sit and hold out and wait for the right opportunity, like you're probably just going to have a better time in the industry. A lot of the guys that come in, it's because they put their back against, or like guys who come in and struggle, it's because they put their back against the wall and they need something now. They got to pay this bill. And the ones that usually do really well, it's like they're sitting on some money, not really in a rush. They want to find the right one. And so, if you want to have a good experience, just make sure you manage those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a difference between operating from a place of desperation versus inspiration. And desperation in sales, man, it's like oil and water. Sometimes people can, you start operating that way, the person you're talking to can smell it on you a mile away, like this guy's just trying to sell me something. So yeah, I think going into it in sort of a desperate mode, even if maybe your situation in life is a little desperate, still up here, I think it has to come from like an inspiration mode of like, I'm inspired to make a change. Like you said, don't get your, kind of cornered in on something and then you're acting desperately. Yeah. You're not going to make any money. It'll be a tough experience overall.
Yeah, dude, that's I love to like hit on this point because it's pretty contradicting, but like, dude, I'm never out here saying like, oh, I'm the best sales guy. I could outsell anybody. I could sell ice to an Eskimo, whatever people fucking say out there. But like one thing that I've always tried to do really well is like understand the problem that I'm solving and how the weight of that problem, and then being able to like effectively articulate that value to the customer to the point where it's like, I don't have to be the most persuasive, charming salesperson around that people buy from just because they like. I mean, it doesn't hurt to be that guy if you can, but that was never my angle. It was always there has to be emotional elements, but like always from a place of just like, does it make sense? And that might be controversial in itself because people are saying, oh, selling to people the way that you would want to buy is like it's a no-go. But that's how I buy things. It's like I just want to know that it is what I'm looking for and it is going to get me the results. And anyways, being able to deliver that message with the conviction has allowed me to like shoot up in the ranks over people that had way more sales experience than me, because I just like studied how to solve problems, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a good point. Because I think a lot of times people get lost in the, how can I say this? There's a lot of sales training out there, and a lot of times sales trainers create concepts because it helps them sell their thing, right? It's like, oh, if you just learned X, Y, and Z, my thing, then you'd be better at selling, when that helps them sell their program better. But when it all comes down to it, it really is just what you're saying. It's, okay, does it make sense for the person? Are you helping them illuminate the need that they have and placing your offer as being the thing that can solve that? And I've always sold from a logical perspective too. It's like, all right, does this make sense first and foremost? And then in ways you can creatively, without overcomplicating, use that logic to create a little bit of emotion, right? Like, okay, you see this is the right fit for you. Like, how do you think this would, change things for you, right? And they can get a little emotionally wild over that, but I think it is based in logic, to a certain extent, making sure it's a right fit and solving an actual problem for someone.
Yeah, bro. The emotional stuff gets you in hot water, whether it's with chargebacks or refunds or the FTC or
Yep.
like getting people to make big purchasing decisions off of that like emotional high is just like, it's not really what I'd like to focus my time on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Refunds absolutely suck. They're the worst for a sales rep, for the person who's refunding, for the business. They just suck
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, that's why like we run a bunch of different teams and we run a bunch of different funnels, but for my community specifically, it's like it goes against all the rules of what what a lot of these high ticket funnels are, what is known to work. Like we share the price upfront in the booking form. We tell people like, are you like, we're looking to make a decision on this timeline, yes or no, can you do it? Like we are literally making it so that the sales call is an onboarding call and we have a show rate of 80%, a close rate of 70%, cash collected rate of near 100%. Now we don't do $1 million a month with it, but we do really well for the effort that is put in. And it's just like, out of the last 100 high ticket clients on the community side, like we haven't had a single refund or chargeback. And we have some, like I have some people in like my network that I know that, every week they're looking for a new payment processor or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's just funny how it works.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just got a couple more quick questions here. So I saw, you've now placed over 500 people into high ticket sales roles. That's an impressive number, man. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of trust built. What are things that, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but like kind of just, you can boil it down. What are things that you notice that separate those who quote unquote make it right versus those who are in and out of the industry in 6 months or a year?
Yeah. Sales is literally just about doing it until it's done, like working on yourself until you're where you need to be, working on this deal until it's where it needs to be. Some of those traits of the entrepreneur, going and, doing whatever it takes, being able to like look at things holistically, figure out where the problem is. If you're the problem, work on that. Just like find the problem, solve the problem, find the problem. Like it's a very like linear process. And so the guys that can just show up, trust the process, make any tweaks or edits to their personal experience or like what their process, and just a lot of people that don't make it, bro, it's like they simply just do not apply to the volume of jobs that you would need to apply to, or they simply do not get enough reps within a role to give it a fair shake. Like people in this industry, like they're looking for fast cash, and like a lot of those guys fizzle out. So
yeah, I think that's true of anything, right? If you're looking for fast cash, look, if there was something out there, I would have found it by now. I would know about it. But as it turns out, right, it's putting in the work and growing as a person, doing the things that you want to be. This person, you got to start acting like it and make your decisions from there, not where you're currently at. So I know you've got a great community. how important is the right network of people for a sales rep?
It's everything, man. It's literally everything. Like the top, if I thought of like the top 10 guys that I know right now, done multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in commissions and high ticket, it's like they have two things. They have a ability, a skill to sell, and they have a network that whenever they need it can help them find something to sell. Like that is the peanut butter jelly Shaq
Yeah.
and Kobe duo that, like, if I'm looking at every single person, they have those two things. So it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I know you hosted a high ticket sales meetup. I think you said you brought in over 120 people. What was that experience like? Are you doing it again? And what can someone expect if they're going to join you in doing something like that?
Yeah, it's hectic, man. Next time we are gonna have another one probably next year in the fall. That was the second one, so the next one will be the third, and around September, October, can't remember. September, I think. And it's a lot of logistics, man. Like to not only be the one that's like coordinating everything, but also like entertaining at the time of the event. Like I learned my lesson. When the event goes from 30 to 120 people from one year to the next, it's like it's a whole different game at that point. Like you can't just like call an audible and have all these people like go somewhere else, do something else, expect something else, like, and they're paying money. So I understand why there's so much money in events now because it's not
Yeah.
easy. And people really get a lot from them, man. They're fun. You meet a lot of cool people. We signed a client, like our agency signed a client from that event, which is really weird because the event's for sales reps mostly. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a good experience overall. And like so many people who came to the first one, came to the last one. They have like great things to say just about the people they met.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And kind of wrapping up here, Dylan, where can your or our listeners connect with you, learn from you, and use your services? Where can they find you?
Sure. Yeah, I would say like whatever social media platform you like to use, serial sales, like serial SERIAL sales, Twitter, Instagram, not so much TikTok anymore, but like YouTube. And then in on all those accounts, I have a link that has all the other links for the community, agency, all that stuff.
Cool. All right, awesome, man. And what's one last thing you'd leave our listeners with here?
I guess it depends which listener we're talking to, but if you can embody that like mindset that the successful sales rep does, it's like I can be who I want to be, I can do what I want to do, and you genuinely believe it. I mean, dude, I went from over the last 5 years, like driving an Amazon truck, being a college student, to having like the dream life on all fronts, financial, relationships, friendships, location. Like I built everything that I had because I felt like I was worthy of it, and I just like chipped away at it. And whether you're a business owner or a sales rep, like it's attainable. Just maybe extend your time horizon. But you just gotta put one foot in front of the other, really.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, again, thank you for doing this here. Our listeners, make sure you go find Dylan. He's the man. This has been an awesome conversation. Congratulations on your success, the business's success, your engagement. That's awesome. It's huge. I look forward to staying connected with you here. And that's a wrap for